Latest on Syria now. Hundreds of Syrians are fleeing to nearby Jordan despite worsening conditions at a refugee camp in the region inside of Jordan. The United Nations says over 600 people arrived just overnight. The Zaatari refugee camp is now facing overcrowding, worsening conditions. Meanwhile, fighting continues in Syria's largest city, Aleppo. The state news agency says the forces of Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad have regained control of the city's main rebel stronghold. Activists, though, are saying rebels are putting up a fight. Assad's ally Iran is hosting a foreign ministers conference as well today to try and seek some kind of resolution to the crisis, according to Iran.
Now, the United States is starting to look at what the situation in Syria would be like if Bashar al-Assad falls. To break that down for us, we have Clifford May, president of the Foundation for Defensive Democracies. He joins us from Washington. So, Clifford, United States officials are saying that Assad's departure from Syria is inevitable. So, what sort of political chaos and violence might happen once he is gone?
Well, first of all, they shouldn't be saying it's inevitable, especially while we in the U.S. and the West in general, and the Arab countries, I would add to that, are giving insufficient support to those trying to bring down the Assad dictatorship, which is backed by Iran, of course. Talking about its inevitability doesn't make it inevitable. Taking some serious actions would. We can discuss what those might be. It doesn't have to mean boots on the ground, but more than we're doing. Now, in terms of what could happen afterwards, well, I think there should be some real fears. We've already had about 17,000, 18,000 people killed by Assad. There's a lot of anger. I think you could see an explosion of anger, particularly against the Alawite minority. That's the ethno-religious group to which Assad belongs. It's about 12% of the population. And also, there could be an explosion of anger against, for example, those Christians in Syria who have seen it as the least worst alternative over the years to align themselves with the Assad dictatorship, and some Druze as well. And you could see mass murders in revenge. That's an absolute possibility. Keep in mind, we saw things like that happening in France after World War II. Now, I think it is something to be worried about and concerned about, but I think you have to do more than talk about it and think about it. You have to begin, really, you should have begun a long time ago, working with the opposition so that they have a certain trust and a certain confidence, and they're listening to you and saying, if and when Assad does go, which we all hope to see, we want peace as quickly as possible and reconciliation among the mosaic of groups that are the population of Syria.
Clifford, the New York Times reporting recently the U.S. is actually actively planning for what is next to make sure there isn't the same kind of chaos in Syria as we saw in Iraq in 2003 once the regime of Saddam Hussein was overthrown. Tell me a little bit, though, about how important that is, what you need to take into consideration for something like that, and what the U.S. can actually do.
Well, I mean, I have to say I'm a little skeptical and dubious. I think by telling the New York Times that we're planning for what's going to happen afterwards, it sounds like you're being proactive rather than passive. But in terms of what you can actually do, unless you're talking about sending troops in to protect the Alawites or protect other minorities there, what else can you be doing? And I don't think if we've not intervened in order to protect those who have been victimized, the majority, by Assad, we're going to send in troops to protect those who have sided with Assad. I just don't believe that's what's going to happen. What you can be doing, what we should have been doing, I would argue, is identifying those groups in the opposition. There are some, quite a few, who are consonant with our values and interests, and if they have more weapons and more money, they will do better vis-a-vis the other factions, and they will have more power after an Assad fall. Don't forget, you have now in Syria also, not a lot, but a significant number of jihadis, al-Qaeda-linked terrorists. They would be very happy to see chaos in that society. They would be very happy to take part in ethnic cleansing by suicide bombing churches, by going after Alawite children and women and civilians. If they have more money than those who are friendly with us do, and if they have more guns than those who are friendly to us have, well, guess who's going to be in a position of greater power? This is not rocket science. So the things we need to do to safeguard the situation afterwards have to begin now, and it has to be more than planning inside the bowels of the State Department. It has to be, there have to be actions taken, I would say, on the ground in terms of empowering those we favor against those we do not.
It's very much, what's the saying? The devil isn't the one you know, it's the one you don't. Some Syrian activists are saying they don't want any U.S. involvement in their country. Is that realistic?
What the Syrian opposition has been saying for a very long time is we don't need boots on the ground and we don't want it. But we do want other forms of aid. What the Syrian opposition has been saying, and I've talked to them, is we have more people who want to fight and defend themselves than we have weapons. We'd like that. We need communications technology. Some of that, I think, has been privately supplied, and I think the U.S. government is doing that. I think the CIA is involved. I don't know how much, providing some forms of assistance, but what the opposition folks I talked to say is it's not nearly enough. And you can see that from what you were talking about earlier, places like Aleppo, where it seems like the government is back to taking ground away from the opposition, using greater firepower. You could have also no-fly zones so that helicopters and airplanes couldn't attack the opposition. You could have safe zones in parts of the country where you could easily make it that the opposition, if they have to run, they would find refuge and not be under attack. There is much more that could be done. The opposition does want help, not every kind of help. Again, they're not asking for anybody to fight their battles for them, but they do know that Iran is supplying Assad, Russia is supplying Assad, not just with weapons, but with troops and trainers and members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, some of whom have just been captured by the rebels. So they would like some help as well, and that's at least what I've been hearing.
And finally, because it will be such a mess whenever this is over, humanitarian, economic, security. I'm curious, though, in your country, in the United States, of course, there is an election campaign underway. How is that affecting the decisions that are being made by the White House and by the Pentagon?
Not very much, in the sense that those in the White House, certainly, who are concentrating on the election, I think, they're reluctant to undertake new initiatives. So they're talking about these things but not doing a lot. I think that the Obama campaign machine has the view that we want to keep things on an even keel. We don't want to upset the apple cart. I'm mixing my metaphors now, so there's less that they would do. Pentagon is different. The Pentagon is comparing contingencies. They're offering up plans. They're saying we could do this, we could do that, but it's up to the political leaders to set the goals. It's up to the Pentagon to say, here's what it would require for us to achieve the goals you're talking about. At the end of the day, the buck does stop with the White House. The White House has to say to the Pentagon or to the CIA and to others, here's what we want to achieve. You tell me what you need and how you could get the mission accomplished.
Clifford May is with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, coming to us from our bureau in Washington. Clifford, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time for us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.